day. It's you I live for every day. I'll follow after you every day. I'll walk with you, my Lord. It's you I live for every day.
Good evening. Our discussion this evening is going to focus on Romans chapter 15, verse 14, where the Apostle Paul is going to compliment the Roman brethren by telling them that he feels like spiritually they've matured a lot. In fact, they've matured to the point that he'll conclude in verse 15, you are able to admonish one another. And that thought of admonishing one another is going to be our focus this evening. Now, once again, I would encourage you when you study to look at multiple translations. I really think that's helpful, and I did that with this passage, and it was interesting to me that there's two different translations for the word in Greek that's used here that is translated in one case, like here, admonish. Both the New American Standard Version and the King James translate, you're able to admonish one another. The English Standard Version and the New International Version translate differently. They translate that you're able to instruct each other. And I got to thinking, there's a difference between instructing somebody and admonishing somebody. Instruction carries with it the idea that you're just imparting information. But admonish carries with it a different connotation. You may well be imparting information, but you're also warning somebody, perhaps correcting them about something. And so I thought, I need to look into this word a little more deeply. So I did, and the bottom line is the translation in the New American Standard Version to admonish one another is a very good translation. That's really what this Greek word means. In fact, everywhere else in the English Standard Version except here, they'll translate the word as admonish. And so what we're being encouraged to do is to admonish one another. Now, exactly what's that mean? Well, let me give you an analogy and kind of see if this helps. Now we have a lot of new technology in our automobiles, and I'm fascinated by all the stuff that a car can do and not do now. But one of the advances in technology that we have in recent years are vehicles that are equipped with a lane change detector. If you veer off over the center line to the left or veer off to the right and you get out of your lane, it's going to sound a beeper and a light's going to flash and let you know that you've wandered out of that lane. In a sense, it is admonishing you, pay attention, stay between the lines. Also, there have been a lot of PSAs recently that are warning us about driving while we're sleepy, driving when drowsy, and how dangerous that could be. And how many lives have been lost because people got in the car and they were sleepy and they tried to drive and it ended up causing an accident. Now, I'm using the analogy because in Matthew chapter 7, Jesus will say that the road that we're on spiritually is straight and narrow. And brethren, let's be honest with each other. It can be easy to wander off that road one way or the other. If we love each other, if we care about one another, I think part of the responsibility that we have to each other, and a responsibility that Paul is actually laying claim to here, is that we are to admonish one another, to help each other, if you would, stay in the right lane and not go wandering off to the right or to the left, but to stay focused on where we need to be. This is something that Paul practiced. 1 Corinthians chapter 11, the brethren in Corinth are really messing up the Lord's Supper. And if you're familiar with chapter 11, you know that Paul's going to admonish them about that. In Ephesians chapters 4 and 5, where Paul is talking to the brethren about how they're to live and how they're to conduct themselves, he's going to talk about things like everyday conversation. And he's going to warn them. Now, the dirty jokes and things like that, those are not appropriate. You don't speak in that way. Now, I don't think he's necessarily accusing them of doing that, but what he's saying is don't let the world He's admonishing them and saying, don't let the world influence how you communicate with each other. We need to operate on a higher level of purity than the world does. And so as Paul here is encouraging us to admonish one another, what he's saying is, you watch out for each other. You care about each other. If you see somebody wandering out of their lane, or you think there's a possibility spiritually they may be driving drowsy, tap them on the shoulder, wake them up, let them know of your concern for them and your love for them. As Paul says in Galatians chapter 6, verse 1, when we approach somebody who's having a problem, we need to do so gently, and we do, in love, and we do. But this is a very important principle that he's laying down here, and one that we certainly need to keep in mind. And I hope as you discuss this passage this evening and talk about ways in which in the Fort Gibson family we can implement this, you'll keep these points in mind. God bless. Have a great time together.
Love one another. Serve one another. Pray for each other. Encourage one another.